Greg Norman spent his playing career as one of the greatest golfers who never quite won everything he deserved. He spent the second half of his life trying to reshape the sport that had broken his heart. Now the league he built to change everything is collapsing, and the golf world has finally said out loud what it always thought about him. Here's the full story. To understand the truth about Greg Norman, you have to start with what he was before LIV, because almost everything that came after can only be understood in that context. At his peak, Norman was the most exciting player in golf, the great white shark. 6 feet tall, blonde, bronzed, impossibly charismatic. He hit the ball farther than anyone, charmed galleries everywhere he went, and became a global celebrity at a time when that was almost impossible for a golfer. He was ranked world number 1 for 331 weeks, a record that stood for decades. He won 2 Open championships. He was, by almost every external measure, one of the best players of his generation. And yet the career of Greg Norman is defined more by what he did not win than by what he did. The heartbreaks pile up to a staggering height. He lost the Masters 4 times, each time more painful than the last. He lost the 1986 PGA Championship on the final hole to Bob Tway, who holed out from a bunker. He lost the 1987 Masters on the second playoff hole to Larry Mize, who holed an impossible pitch from off the green. He held the 54-hole lead at all 4 majors in the same calendar year in 1986, the Saturday Slam, and won none of them. And then in 1996 came the defining moment of his career, the one that history refuses to release him from. Norman entered the final round of the Masters with a 6-stroke lead. It was the largest lead going into Sunday in major championship history, and he shot 78. Nick Faldo played perhaps the greatest final round in Masters history, and won by 5 shots. Norman finished second. He was 41 years old, and he had choked away the most commanding lead the Masters had ever seen. Those losses never left him, and they help explain something important about the psychology behind LIV Golf that is often missed. Norman did not just want to build a better golf league. He wanted, on some level, to beat the establishment that had stood by and watched while Bob Tway holed out from a bunker, and Larry Mize chipped in from off the green, and Nick Faldo played the round of his life in 1996. He wanted to prove that the system was not as all-powerful as it thought it was, that there was another way, that the people who ran professional golf did not get to control everything forever. That personal motivation, mixed in with the genuine business logic, is part of what made LIV feel so personal to everyone involved. It was not just a rival tour. It was Norman's attempt to rewrite the part of his story where the game always found a way to deny him at the last moment. And so he threw himself into golf with a ferocity that the sport had never quite seen before. He turned professional at 17, almost entirely self-taught, with a swing that experts constantly warned him would never hold up at the highest level. He ignored them and went to work. In 2021, Saudi Arabia's public investment fund came looking for a figurehead to launch a rival golf league. They found their man immediately. Norman had spent years attempting to launch competing golf tours that never got off the ground. This time, the Saudis had the money to make it real, and Norman became the commissioner and CEO of LIV Golf. He recruited aggressively, spending billions of dollars in guaranteed contracts to pull away some of the biggest names in the sport: Phil Mickelson, Dustin Johnson, Cam Smith, Brooks Koepka, Jon Rahm, Bryson DeChambeau. One by one, the stars defected, and Norman presided over it all with evident relish, telling anyone who would listen that LIV was the future of golf, and that the PGA Tour was a relic that deserved to be disrupted. For 2 years, he built it with genuine energy. He launched $30 million events around the world. He created team franchises. He signed players that the PGA Tour had assumed were unattainable. He pushed the professional game into markets it had never seriously entered. And when the framework agreement between the PGA Tour and Saudi PIF was announced in June of 2023, Norman himself became the signal that things had gone as far as they could under his leadership. He was reportedly not part of the conversations that led to that announcement. The deal was being negotiated around him and above him, by the Saudis and the tour's leadership, with Norman kept out of the room. The man who had launched the revolution was no longer trusted to be in the room where the peace was being discussed. Quick pause. If you think Greg Norman was right to fight for players' rights and free agency in golf, type "he had a point" in the comments. If you think he damaged the sport irreparably for personal reasons, type "wrong man." I read every single one. But the campaign had a fundamental problem that the golf world identified very quickly. The problem was Greg Norman himself, because the most significant obstacle to LIV Golf's legitimacy and to any eventual peace deal with the PGA Tour was not the Saudi money, and it was not the players who joined. It was the animosity that Norman's presence generated among the very people whose cooperation the league needed. Tiger Woods, who had more influence over the sport's direction than anyone alive, made his position clear at the 2022 Masters. When asked about Norman's role, Tiger said he was not the right fit. That was diplomatic by Tiger's standards. The message was unmistakable. As long as Norman was running LIV, Tiger was not coming to the table. And without Tiger's involvement in any framework for the sport's future, no solution could be complete. The same dynamic played out in the attempted negotiations between LIV and the PGA Tour. Again and again, Norman's personal reputation and the grudges he had accumulated over decades of feuding with the tour's leadership became a roadblock rather than an asset. The man who was supposed to be the revolution's architect had become its biggest liability. He was replaced as CEO before his contract expired in August of 2025. His farewell statement said he was proud of what he had accomplished, that his commitment to doing the right thing for golf had never wavered. Fans reacted without much sympathy. The response across golf was damning, full of people saying Norman had divided the game, that he had ruined professional golf, that he had accomplished nothing except spend Saudi billions without a workable plan. PGA Tour winner Michael Kim gave perhaps the most surgical response on social media, asking an AI to define the word loyalty, after Norman made the extraordinary claim that he remained, even after everything, still loyal to the PGA Tour as a lifetime member. It was an almost comical statement. The man who had spent 3 years recruiting the tour's biggest stars to leave and join a rival league insisting he had always been loyal to the institution he was dismantling. But it revealed something important about how Norman sees himself, as a reformer rather than a destroyer, as a man who forced a bloated, self-interested organization to evolve rather than one who tried to burn it down out of personal spite. He argues, not entirely without evidence, that LIV's competition forced the PGA Tour to raise prize money and create equity programs for players. He calls that his legacy. Many in golf call it rationalization. Now, in 2026, with PF pulling its funding from LIV at the end of the season, Norman is watching from the outside as the league he built collapses in slow motion. He sat down with a golf podcast in April and was asked whether LIV could survive without the Saudi money. His answer said everything. He said it would totally depend on Scott O'Neill, the CEO who replaced him, and that O'Neill would have to get out and do a roadshow to find new investors. The man who spent 4 years claiming he had the vision and the relationships to transform professional golf is now saying someone else will have to figure it out. He praised O'Neill and praised the PGA Tour's new CEO Brian Rolap in the same interview, the language of a man who knows the chapter is closed and is trying to exit with dignity intact. And so the truth that golfers are finally saying out loud about Greg Norman is complicated, because the full picture is always more complicated than a headline. Norman was not wrong that PGA Tour players needed more power, more money, more say in their own futures. The free agency conversation he started was real and legitimate. The prize money increases the tour made under pressure from LIV were real. Those are his legacy too, and they are not nothing. But the truth is also this. Norman turned a business negotiation into a personal vendetta, and in doing so, he spent $5 billion of Saudi money to divide the sport he claimed to love, block the path to reunification for 3 years, and hand the media a simple story about a grudge dressed up as a revolution. When he was finally removed from the equation, the conversations about reunification and player returns became infinitely more manageable almost immediately. That is the verdict the golf world keeps arriving at. Not that he was evil, and not that he was entirely wrong, but that he was the wrong man, at the wrong time, serving the right idea badly. The league that was going to change everything is now scrambling to find anyone willing to keep the lights on past August. The players who took the guaranteed money are looking nervously at a future without a home. And Greg Norman is giving podcasts, predicting that someone else will figure out what to do next. It is a quiet ending for someone who arrived so loudly, and in a strange way, it mirrors everything else about his career. The right talent, the right moment, the wrong outcome. The great white shark, who spent his life circling the biggest prizes, and somehow still ended up watching someone else take them. If this breakdown landed for you, drop a like before you scroll away. It tells the algorithm to push these stories to other golf fans. And subscribe if you want more of these, the kind that tell the full story rather than just one side of it. There are more coming.